interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Month.
Whole month of Courage, the Cowardly Dog. First appearing in 1996, it was picked up by Cartoon Network, who work in the middle of Burbank, and directed by cartoonist John Dilworth. Though many years have passed since the original air date, it's now time for Zack to celebrate this great show.
Well, old sport, what do you think? Neat. Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Courage Month. So, today's episodes we're going to be reviewing are Quack Balloon and Windmill Vandals. So let's get into both of those. Okay, so this episode, Quack Balloon, marks the return of Quack again. He comes back in this episode, and this time he has a different plan on how to actually make himself filthy rich. So, it starts off with the premise of Muriel trying to make what are they called? Scottish dream cookies using an old Scottish recipe. She has in her Scottish cookbook. If you can't tell, she's Scottish. And there's a lot of evidence to the fact that she's Scottish, but in case you didn't quite get the fact that she went to Scotland in the last episode or two, she's Scottish. She has a Scottish cookbook. It is heavily implied that she's Scottish, but in any case, as Courage is actually helping her prepare the ingredients, which currently calls for several cups of what are they called? Butter. As he's getting the butter out of the fridge, Eustace barges into the kitchen, and he doesn't have his glasses. He has no idea where he left them, and he actually winds up startling Courage and dropping butter on Courage's head. So, Muriel points out that he shouldn't be stumbling around without his glasses, pointing out that he's not going to be able to see if he can't find them, and Eustace is stubborn, pointing out that he's fine and he doesn't need any help. Although it's very clear that he doesn't. He keeps running into things. He breaks the kitchen table at one point. He's not okay. He definitely needs the help. So Muriel volunteers Courage to be his seeing eye dog, which he's initially very reluctant to do, but decides against it anyway because he realizes he needs the help regardless of whether or not it comes from Courage or not. So with that, as Muriel is actually still trying to make her Scottish dream cookies, Courage and Eustace actually wind up going outside to look for Eustace's glasses, and it's at this point where Quack shows up in a giant hot air balloon, and just lands on the back property. And Courage isn't initially sure what to do until he sees what's going on, until he sees Quack pop out, and realizing that Quack is probably there for no good reason, proceeds to run into the house, dragging Eustace behind him, and tries to tell Muriel about what's going on. But she's kind of just thinking about if Courage had found Eustace's glasses yet. At which point Quack actually swaps her Scottish cookbook for a Swedish one. And because of that, the recipe is actually slightly different, which is that she now needs Swedish vinegar, which can only be found in Sweden. And Muriel is a little distraught because she realizes now she can't actually make her cookies. But then the Quack actually winds up knocking on the back door, and Courage Eustace doesn't even need to see the Quack to just tell him to go away. He's just like, we don't want any, and he doesn't even know who it is or why he's there. At which point, Quack proceeds to explain how he's a traveling hot air balloon pilot, and he proceeds to point out that he's going to actually that he knows that Muriel actually needs, that he's actually offering a trip to Sweden, and which winds up being a little too convenient since Muriel currently needs to go to Sweden to get her final recipe ingredient that she needs. Despite Courage's protest, he does indeed decide to go with Quack and actually go to Sweden with him. And also Courage kind of brings Eustace along as well, but Eustace remarks that that he's not going to Sweden without his glasses, but then remarks that he probably wouldn't be going to Sweden with his glasses anyway. And Muriel just tells him to suit himself, and she proceeds to climb into the balloon, and she also asks Courage to follow along with her. So Courage takes this opportunity to just kind of ditch Eustace and go with Muriel, but then the Quack points out that he only has room for two passengers, and that the dog has to stay, which which is just a clever way of him just trying to keep Courage out of his business, but which doesn't wind up working because it's Courage the cowardly dog. But in any case, with that, Muriel says goodbye to Courage and tells him to help Eustace keep looking for his glasses, pointing out that he'd like that. And with that, they then proceed to go up in the air and start flying away. At which point, Eustace actually scoops up Courage's leash again, and they continue to go onward to continue looking for Eustace's glasses. And while they're in the air, Quack actually puts a shackle around Muriel's ankle, claiming that it's a safety harness, which is a lie. And then he proceeds to pull a lever inside the balloon, which causes it to drop out of the bottom. And Courage sees all of this and immediately rushes to try and save Muriel, which again dragging Eustace behind him, and also proceeding to drag him through a giant field of rocks and cactuses, which causes Eustace to become very badly injured as a result. But in any case, Courage then proceeds to get underneath the balloon and tries to catch Muriel, but Muriel is then pulled back up into the balloon, and it's revealed to be a bungee cord that Quack has tied around her ankle. But Quack and Muriel's a little dazed and confused because she just got dropped out of a hot air balloon without any prior warning or knowledge. And she's very highly disoriented and doesn't fully understand what was going on. But Quack responds that claims that the only way she's actually going to be able to get the Swedish vinegar is by dropping out of the balloon and plucking it, and then tells her that she actually needs to drop out of the Swedish balloon again so that she can actually continue practicing. So he does exactly that, but once she's out of earshot and actually outside the balloon being dropped out of the trapdoor, he then reveals his true plan, which is to go to the Swedish piggy bank and then proceed to rob it blind. And he's going to unwittingly use Muriel for that. But he doesn't say a word of this to Muriel, and she immediately returns back to him and points out that it's not so bad once you get past the terror, and then proceeds to pass out from it. At which point they proceed to sail off and kind of go on a bit of a cross-country tour with Courage dragging Eustace behind him through a bunch of different environments, and Quack just kind of dropping Muriel out over in the same environments. First, they stop in New York, where Courage tries to cross the street, but Eustace is reluctant to cross the street because he doesn't know what's going on. At which point D. Long actually winds up crashing into the leash and winds up being pulled and slung back. With D. Long just remarking his usual catchphrase, and that, ironically enough, the entire joke is that it's usually D. Long who's not paying attention and not watching where he's going. But here it kind of is applicable because obviously Courage kind of wasn't watching where he was going. So kind of both. I mean, D. Long wasn't watching where he was going either way, so he wound up getting slung back. But still, it's kind of funny that his catchphrase is actually right for once. That somebody actually did not indeed watch where they were going. But in any case, Courage then proceeds to drag Eustace into a cruise ship and follows after Quack across the ocean. With Quack then proceeding to continue to drop Muriel over several European landmarks. They actually stop in a fountain in Rome, which Muriel plucks some coins out of, and Courage just barely manages to get to her in time and just barely misses her. And Eustace winds up landing face first in the fountain, remarking that he thinks they might be in the Mississippi River. But then they go to Quack's home country of France, where Muriel swipes some baguettes and a hat, and Courage continues to drag Eustace through the streets of France with him being hit in the face with several baguettes, and he realizes he's in France. At which point Muriel remarks when she gets back in the balloon that she thinks she's getting the hang of it. It also is revealed that she's actually stolen a couple things already for Quack. With Quack just kind of doing this in glee because he's very happy about how well this is working out. But eventually, they do wind up in Sweden, where it's revealed that the general and his lieutenant have actually been asked to guard the Swedish piggy bank, which they remark is a really great idea, but in actuality, it's a terrible one considering these guys are constantly as a liability to themselves, much less anybody around them. Literally, their introductory episode, they literally were just like, hey, there's a satellite falling. We don't really care about that. That was their introductory episode. They were more concerned with hurting each other than they were with actually doing their jobs. So yeah, they're not the most competent people, but eventually LeQuack does arrive at the Swedish piggy bank and remarks that the Swedish vinegar is actually underneath several green leaves, and that Muriel is going to have to pluck them all to be able to get to it. But she notes that something is very strange, and notes that the Swedish piggy bank looks very weird, and wonders if this is indeed truly what she's supposed to do, and if it's legal. But LeQuack merely responds, in French, what is this legal? He doesn't, who's to say it legal, which is, his catchphrase is in French, but it basically means, what is this? And at which point Muriel just kind of shrugs and jumps out of the hot air balloon and starts stealing the money by the armful, and starts returning it to LeQuack's balloon and eventually she does steal all the money from the Swedish piggy bank but it doesn't really get wise to the fact that she's stealing money until the very end, where she realizes that the money that she not only didn't see the Swedish vinegar, but also the Swedish vinegar itself, but also the leaves that she's stealing look kind of strange and look like foreign money. And LeQuack just remarks that's fine, and then proceeds to kick her out of the plane, or kick her out of the hot air balloon, and then decides to cut her loose because now she's starting to learn too much. And also so he can fly away and not have any sort of liabilities. But in any case, Courage shows up right as this is about to happen. And also right as the government notices that LeQuack is even there in the first place. And they start preparing the cannons to fire, and also Eustace winds up getting stuck in one of the cannons, which winds up becoming a relevant plot point because they all start opening fire on LeQuack, and Eustace is the one that ultimately brings the hot air balloon down. Eustace actually winds up going through the hot air balloon and sailing through the air, which causes the hot air balloon to start sinking. And LeQuack, in a desperate attempt to actually try and take off again, actually resumes cutting on Muriel's jumping harness. But Courage realizing what LeQuack is about to do, climbs into one of the cannons himself and proceeds to launch himself so that he can actually rescue Muriel as she's being dropped from LeQuack's balloon, and winds up saving her, and they wind up landing in a Swedish bakery. Meanwhile, LeQuack actually winds up going down, sinking into the Swedish piggy bank, and the piggy bank and LeQuack's balloon and all the money are destroyed in the process, and the entire thing is destroyed because they're all focused on LeQuack's balloon, which is currently sinking into the piggy bank. So the entire base just destroys itself. It self-destructs, and the general and lieutenant merely remark that was a job well done, and then they leave and go home. Meanwhile, Muriel winds up landing in the Swedish bakery and getting the exact ingredients she needed to actually finish her Swedish dream cookies, which, ironically, LeQuack didn't know that there was actual Swedish vinegar in Sweden, but ironically enough, he did wind up helping Muriel fulfill her recipe, so there's that. And meanwhile, Eustace actually, and also they have to fly back home, so Courage actually puts on a hat. Well, Eustace, because he was fired out of the cannon prior in the episode, winds up sailing all the way back home and lands face first in the toilet, where he finds his glasses. Yeah, it turns out his glasses were in the toilet the whole time, and he's just happy to have found his glasses. So it all works out in the end. Muriel gets the ingredient she needs to finish her Swedish dream cookies, and then she and Courage immediately fly back home. Courage winds up finding his glasses, and LeQuack is presumably arrested again. His balloon is destroyed, and he winds up sailing into the compound on a parachute, and we don't see hide nor tail of him at the end of this episode. So presumably he was arrested after this. So presumably he was just arrested after this, and we're never gonna see him again. But yeah, this episode is just interesting. LeQuack comes back again. And while his ultimate goal was to actually steal money from the Swedish piggy bank, in the process he actually wound up helping both Eustace and Muriel completely by accident. That was not his intended goal, but Muriel wound up getting the ingredients she needed to finish her fake recipe, and Eustace found his glasses because that was the thing he was struggling with throughout the whole episode. So yeah, LeQuack did an antagonistic thing, but in the process he wound up being helpful. So that's kind of ironic. But in any case, that's my review of Quack Balloon. Onward to the next review. Okay, so this episode, Windmill Vandals, actually regards some lore surrounding the farmhouse itself, which is kind of interesting, and I do kind of like that a little bit. So this episode actually starts off with everybody kind of going about their business. Courage and Muriel are in the basement, and she's putting together a welding statue of a muscular looking Courage, which is kind of funny and kind of impressive. And Muriel is merely remarking about how good he looks as a statue. And points out that to just keep posing, and in a few more minutes she'll be finished. But while Eustace is actually watching a gladiator movie on TV, at which point the windmill starts malfunctioning and their power goes out, and it's revealed that the windmill is actually the source of the bag's power, since obviously they live literally and figuratively in the middle of nowhere. So obviously nobody's coming out to connect them to the power grid. They're solely relying on that windmill to actually keep their power going. Sure enough, Eustace, Muriel, and Courage actually come out to fix the windmill. Well, specifically Eustace. Muriel comes along pointing out that it's probably time to replace the windmill. Pointing out that with all the times that Eustace has had to go and fix it over the series, you'd think it would stay fixed. And of course, yeah, that's very, very true. That is indeed very true. Since the windmill often gets destroyed a lot in this series, it winds up it has been destroyed quite a few times, and winds up kind of destroying everything, and it kind of winds up just getting caught in the aftermath of whatever's going on during that episode. But Eustace merely remarks that it's fine and that he can fix that as long as he's around to fix it, he'll continue to fix it and keep it going. And then proceeds to climb up and start monkeying around with it, and also orders Courage to bring him his monkey wrench so he can actually kind of fix the windmill. Since while he's monkeying around with it, he accidentally knocks the cap on that holds the blades off, and it almost hits Courage down below, who just barely dodges out of the way. And Eustace just tells Courage to come up and bring him his wrench. So Courage indeed does, and brings it up to actually to help him fix the windmill. But Eustace is upset about the fact that it's covered in dog slobber, and then proceeds to shake it out over Courage's head so that Courage is covered in his own spit. And then proceeds to start tightening the windmill to actually get it going, but then it stopped. But while Eustace is tinkering with it, it actually winds up stopping completely. At which point Courage sees some strange black smoke in the distance, and is a little bit terrified because he doesn't know what it is. But then Eustace starts spinning the windmill, which causes the black smoke to disappear, much to Courage's confusion, and he has no idea what's causing it. But in any case, Eustace then proceeds to start tightening the wrench, and while he's actually working on tightening everything, he orders Courage to actually put the wrench on the windmill and not stop spin and not let go until he gets back with the tools he needs. So Courage is just kind of left alone on by his lonesome on top of the windmill, while Eustace and Muriel actually go inside to go look for his tools. And obviously Courage eventually loses his grip on the wrench and actually winds up falling off the windmill, and the windmill actually stops. At which point Courage realizes what is actually going on with the black smoke, and it's revealed to actually be a group of windmill, what are they called in the episode, the titular Windmill Vandals, who are skeletal Viking-like creatures. But in any case, Courage then proceeds to start wrenching the windmill, which causes it to go again. But this is just a recurring thing where every time he stops, he gets tired and loses his grip on the windmill, and he accidentally falls off. Every time he accidentally falls over, otherwise the Windmill Vandals come back and try to attack him. But so he keeps having to climb up the windmill and actually keep wrenching it. But eventually he winds up landing while he's trying to keep the Windmill Vandals at bay, he accidentally lands in Eustace's bag of tools and winds up getting stuck in there. When he pops out, the Windmill Vandals are there to tear him a new ass. So he climbs up. So he grabs a bag of tools and actually climbs up the windmill. And in the process, it actually winds up getting stuck on the windmill. And Courage winds up having to cling to it for safety. But he eventually is, and in the process, he actually chips off some of the paint on the back of the windmill. But in the process, he gets skyrocketed down to the ground, and then the bag lands on top of him. And the Windmill Vandals are allowed to hurt him again, but Then they disappear because the windmill is turning again. At which point, Eustace finally comes out and yells at Courage for not doing what he was asked to do. But Muriel merely tells him to back off, pointing out that he did at the very least get it spinning again. And Eustace is kind of happy about that and starts actually trying to climb up the windmill with Courage's help. At which point Muriel actually notes that there's some strange symbols on the back of the windmill, and Courage takes notes of them as well and actually snaps pictures of them to actually see what's going on with them. And while the power's still going, he actually proceeds to bring the pictures back to the house and scans them into the scanner on the computer, and then asks the computer what it knows about the symbols. And the computer remarks that apparently the farmhouse is over 250 years old, which makes a bit of sense, or at least the windmill is. But he then proceeds to tell the story of Giles Colette, a farmer who originally owned the farmhouse over 2 centuries ago. He built a windmill to give himself power, and while in an era where everybody was reliant on the Vandals water wheel to actually get power. And when the water dried up, Giles wound up being the only guy with power, and the Vandals wound up hitting him for that and tried to get his revenge. But Giles was smart and he actually wound up carving the aforementioned symbols into the back of the windmill to keep his farm safe from the Vandals and using mystical powers. So, long story short, as long as the windmill is turning, the Vandals can't actually return. But the computer merely remarks that it's just a story, but then the power goes out as he's saying that, and Courage pokes his head out to see that the windmill has actually gone out and stopped spinning. And then the Vandals actually wind up coming back and start swarming the windmill, which Courage realizes is a problem and proceeds to race outside to actually save his owners. And Eustace doesn't, and Muriel don't fully understand even as the Windmill Vandals are surrounding them, and the Vandals and Eustace even remarks if this is indeed a rodeo, but then the Vandals cut his head off and wind up carrying his head away. And Courage, realizing that the windmill is actually the only thing that's going to keep them away, proceeds to climb up the windmill tower and runs on the windmill to keep the blades running, which causes the Vandals to disappear. And Muriel does point out that they need to get inside before the Vandals come back, but Courage remarks that he can't, and she doesn't understand, and Muriel actually doesn't fully understand why until Courage winds up getting tired, which causes the windmill to stop spinning. And then the Vandals come back, at which point Courage proceeds to start running on the windmill again and make them disappear. At which point Muriel realizes the windmill is what is indeed keeping the Vandals away. And realizing they need to actually get it fixed, they need to figure out they realize that they need to get Eustace's head back, since currently he's the only one who knows how to fix the windmill, and if he doesn't have his head so he can actually fix the damn thing, obviously it's going to cause problems. And case in point, Eustace's headless body actually picks up a hammer and breaks the windmill in its entirety. Eustace's body actually winds up putting a hammer through the leg of the windmill, which causes the entire thing to collapse. And sure enough, without the windmill to actually permanently be spinning, the Vandals actually wind up coming back and proceed to swarm the bags again, and this time they successfully cut Muriel's head off. Which results in her actually getting her body popped off, and she yells to Courage to get her back to her body. So Courage, who is now dazed a little bit from the fact that he fell off the windmill, proceeds to swipe the Windmill Vandal's head from not the Windmill Vandal, but proceeds to swipe Muriel's head from the Windmill Vandal by wrapping its own cape around its eyes so it can't see, and popping Muriel's head away from it, and then proceeds to actually try and throw her head to her body, but then one of the Windmill Vandals swats it away, and it winds up landing next to Eustace's body instead, who picks it up, and Muriel winds up having her head on Eustace's body, which causes Courage to freak out because that's not right. At which point he finds the Vandal that actually has Eustace's head and takes Eustace's head and tries to return it to his body so that Eustace can actually fix the windmill. But in the process, one of the Vandals actually cuts off Courage's head instead, and Eustace winds up putting his head on Courage's body, much to his chagrin. And as he remarks, now he's a stupid dog. At which point, Muriel's body actually swipes Courage's head from the Windmill Vandal and puts it on. And now, long story short, all of their heads are on the wrong bodies. But they then realize that the Vandals are about to charge again. So Muriel and are also about to attack Muriel. So Courage, using Muriel's body, actually uses his head from Courage's body and proceeds to use it as a bowling ball to knock all the Windmill Vandals down. And then they go to retrieve Uses' head. And then return their bodies, and then after returning back to their own bodies, they then proceed to fix the windmill before the Vandals get back up. So they wind up going at a rapid pace to actually fix the tower and then put the windmill back together, and actually wind up getting it to spin faster than it usually would, which causes the Windmill Vandals to actually dissipate and disappear permanently. And Eustace climbs back down and celebrates with his wife over the fact that they finally fixed the windmill and were able to get the Windmill Vandals to go away, but then Courage notices something interesting, which is that now that the windmill is actually spinning fast enough, he actually sees an afterimage of Giles Cornery, who is apparently engraved an abstract picture of himself on the windmill, and it's implied that his spirit is actually the one protecting the farmhouse. If considering the fact that he used a carving of himself to ward off the Vandals, which means he wound up creating an abstract piece to actually ward off the Vandals, and it's implied that he's using his spiritual powers to protect the house. And then Courage, in his surprise, actually winds up falling off the windmill tower and knocking everybody's head off. Which, and that's how the episode ends. So, this episode actually adds quite a bit of interesting things about it. First and foremost, obviously, is the fact that the windmill is that the farmhouse is protected by Giles, who apparently been guarding the farmhouse for 250 years through his spiritual energy, and might also imply that he may be the one actually helping Courage protect the farmhouse. Because there are definitely a couple of instances where Courage has had some supernatural help by protecting the farmhouse. So, and there's definitely some weird instances where Courage has defended the farmhouse without his help, without much help. But and there's just a supernatural thing that helps him. But so it may be Giles who's protecting the farmhouse alongside Courage. His spirit is just it's implied that his spirit is there so long as the windmill spins. So maybe he's actually protecting the farmhouse and helping Courage keep it safe. That's just an interesting thing I think. But yeah, this episode just is just kind of very interesting in that the Bag farmhouse was built by a guy 250 years ago, and he's protecting it, and he's protecting the farmhouse ever since using his spirit. So that is a very interesting idea, and I kind of like that episode. But in any case, that's my review of Courage the Cowardly Dog. What did you guys think? Let's get discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support me. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check this out in the description below as well. Also, be sure to check out my Twitch channel description. I stream every Sunday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to actually see those, by all means, again, link is down in the description. Please just go check those out. And also, finally, if you want to see even more content from me other than that, be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you guys want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. Also, I don't know if I brought it up, but be sure to follow me over on Discord, because we are actually be sure to just go check out my Discord in general, because we are actually I actually had to change some things, but we're going to be doing the live watch along over on Discord, not on Twitch. I looked into it. It's apparently rentable movies aren't included on the list of things you can watch on Twitch, which is weird, but in any case, we're going to be watching that over on Discord. So be sure to go check that out. Link is down in the description. Just go check that out. Make sure you join the Discord so that you guys actually see that. But yeah, in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!